the name of We Are Innovation, I thank you all for being here and the ones who are watching the video afterwards. Just very quickly, my name is Federico Fernández, and what I will be showing you today, and then we'll be discussing, and of course we'll be discussing other topics, is a survey, an opinion poll that We Are Innovation commissioned Ipsos to do here in Sweden. I mean, Sweden is a very important country, and particularly this year is a very important country. We'll be talking about that. But let's say what we wanted to do is to try to shed some light regarding what ex-smokers who have switched to alternative nicotine products, what were their views and what were their drivers in order to make the switch. And well, we found out some very interesting results, which I'm going to show you in a minute. But just before that, a few words about We Are Innovation. We Are Innovation, as our name clearly says, it's a network comprised of more than 30 organizations, NGOs, foundations, think tanks based in the Americas and in Europe, that we want to defend innovation and human creativity and creative problem solving in all our societies. We try to select, as you know, innovation is a very wide field. So with what we always try to work with are fields that are not only innovative, but also have deep human impact. And in that regard, everything that has to do with innovation in the nicotine space has basically, as Sweden proves, and you know there are speakers that will tell us that about that later much better than I can, but as Sweden proves, these are the ways that this is finally the way to solve the problem of smoking. We are not prohibitionists, but if we realize that smoking is a health hazard, and this is the way to solve it, and we think that Sweden really testifies that, and what Sweden is achieving this year is a major achievement, sorry for the redundancy, and we really believe it should be portrayed and it should be discussed, and probably it should be taken as a model in other countries that are trying to tackle smoking-related health issues. So this is why we're here. Thank you again for your presence, and thanks everybody who's watching. And Amanda, should I start? Would you like to say a few words before?
I would like to join Federico and welcome you here for joining us and for joining us via link afterwards to discuss this very interesting but underreported questions, because I think as a Swede we tend to forget what a unique position we are in this country, and that as a Swede it's always a bit dangerous to say that other countries can learn from us, because a grandiose self-image is usually a problem. But the next question, we actually do have something to teach, I think, and we should be prouder of our results in this area, and we should open the discussion up to how others can reach the same results. So I'm very happy that we're helping out with this presentation and this seminar. I'm very happy with our distinguished guests, and I think we'll have a great discussion today.
Good. So this is what brought us here today together. As I said, we commissioned Ipsos to run an opinion poll in ex-smokers who switched to safer nicotine products. And I want to share the results with you. I think they're quite enlightening, and they are also puzzling in several ways, particularly for someone like me who is not a Swede. And I mean, I second what Amanda just said. I think Sweden is a role model, definitely, here, and should be grandiose about it. But there were some of the responses that we got that we found it puzzling, I would say. I'm not going to bore you with the methodology, by the way. The full document, I'm not going to present you the full document, but I'll be presenting probably the highlights. It's going to be available on our website, weareinnovation.global, in 2 hours at 6 p.m. local time. The same as a press release about it, but as you can see, the fieldwork is very recent, and this is the first time this poll, only few people have seen this poll, and it's never been presented. This is the first time. And well, this is the first, I wouldn't call it striking, because let's say it's quite obvious for at least the people who are here, but this is a very interesting first result that we got. The main driver in order for people who used to smoke and switch to alternative nicotine products is taking care of their health. That's by far both genders, social and financial issues definitely take some have some weight in their decision, but health is the main one by far, which for us makes us think that definitely innovative products, well, and snus, which I think it's a fantastic Swedish innovation, and it would be, by the way, we have to take this into consideration, it would be a great innovation basically all over the world because it's forbidden all over the world, so it would be something that it would be great if it's available, really empowers individuals, particularly people who currently smoke or used to smoke, to change into ways that protect their well-being. Another issue that I want to highlight, because it's going to come up later, is the issue that in the case of women, the social aspects take more precedence than for men. This is not a very striking difference, but there will be other instances in which, let's say, certain gender sensitivities should also be taken into consideration. Second result that we found out asking current alternative nicotine products users. They really manifested, they were very clear that it's important to have a wide variety of products in order to give the nudge for people to make the switch from smoking tobacco to safer alternatives. Snus is still the most popular product in Sweden, and is still king. But let's say it's not the only one. And nicotine pouches, more and more, let's say, ex-smokers are turning into nicotine pouches, which is probably let's say the newer and newest innovation in the area. And also vaping is becoming more popular in the country. And again, we think this clearly shows that it's important that we allow a variety of products to exist and be available for adults in order to cater to the different needs of people who currently smoke, in order to allow them to make the switch. Another important issue regarding this topic is that there is non plus ultra, I would say. Let's say today we have these 4 products, but we don't know what could come in the future. So also we should take into consideration, and stakeholders and people and decision makers should do whatever they can to allow the development of new alternatives. Development and availability are definitely very, very important. And in the case of women, I said snus is king, but in the case of women, nicotine pouches are queen. Nicotine pouches for women are the most popular product, and vaping in the case of women is twice as popular as for men. So again, there are certain issues that not only can be evaluated from a perspective of public health and of availability, but also there are certain gender questions that we have to keep in mind. Another thing that it seems really facilitates the switch from smoking to safer alternatives are all these, but I want to focus, because of time, in the first. Please keep your attention on the first 3 columns of top to bottom of the chart. Flavor and nicotine levels, particularly, were overwhelmingly mentioned as issues that really facilitate the switch. And I'll go back to this issue in a moment from a different angle. And the third one, and this also I think could be food for thought for the discussion panel afterwards. 61% of the people we surveyed claimed that affordability is very important also to incentivize people to quit. And we see that in the way that alternative nicotine products should be priced competitively And also, the taxation of these products should reflect the level, let's say, of risk or less risk in this case that they have. We all know that in many countries and in many jurisdictions around the globe, all these products are put under the umbrella of tobacco, and they are taxed as if they were combustion cigarettes. Because, well, they are not, of course, and well, to add insult to injury, in the case of nicotine pouches and vaping, they don't even have tobacco. But well, we know that that happens often. Another issue, coming back to the flavors and the nicotine levels, the need of wide variety and focus on women. 50% of women, compared to 37% of men, claim that having their product in the flavor of their choice was very important. And in the case of nicotine level, more than a third said that being able to select what nicotine level was very important, compared to 23% of men. Again, I think this should also spark the discussion regarding that harm reduction strategies and policies should also have certain considerations for and certain gender sensitivities, we could say. And compared to other countries, because we know this is happening in many places, two of the, let's say, the black beasts or the demons that today people who are harm reduction denialists, we could call them, are trying to fight, are both flavors and nicotine levels. They want to really restrict the level of nicotine that these products can carry, and they want to eliminate flavors or only allowing burnt tobacco flavor or something like that. This will be, let's say, if things like this would be applied in Sweden, and I would dare to say in many other parts of the world, this not only would be anti-harm reduction policies, but they would also be anti-women policies. They would be basically the policies of the patriarchy, and I assume none of us want that. The last two slides, and these were the ones for us more puzzling, and I'm very happy that we have a member of parliament today who could perhaps enlighten us about certain things, because these are the ones that gave us more doubts than certainties. We asked, again, ex-smokers who currently use safer nicotine and innovative products, how they think the perception of these products are by government, public health institutions, and society as a whole. And a staggering, let's say, according to them, 61% of them said that the government was neutral. When we see the amazing things that are happening in Sweden, it's, let's say, politicians all around the globe want to claim successes. It's interesting that it's, and well, 24% said felt hostility. Only 15% have like a positive feeling, of the attitude of the government. And this is, I want to relate the government perceptions with the society perceptions, because the society perceptions, although are not, let's say, spectacular, it's like, the weight is shifted. You see positivity 32, neutrality 58, and hostility only 10. If, let's say, the government could do something to change the perceptions and just mirror how society, in principle, according to our polls, sees these products, the change would be substantial. Hostility would be less than half what it is today, and the positive, would more than double. This is something just to think about. We really found this very puzzling. And the other thing that was for us extremely surprising, particularly for things that probably Dr. Milton and others, I'm sure, will be discussing in a few minutes, is this is the perception of people who use these products now, and they were ex-smokers. From public health institutions, what they feel, the attitudes they perceive are hostility. That's the most spread attitude, followed closely by neutrality. Positivity or friendliness, only 9%, is the lowest of the three things we measured. We know, just before one thing, just to make clear, we know and we all remember, let's say, what Ronald Reagan said, the most dangerous words, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. We know that, and on the one hand, we could say maybe this neutral position is the right one because it has led into some sort of laissez-faire in the best way that we can understand that. But on the other hand, both regarding innovation in the nicotine space and innovation in general, there are a lot of studies. For instance, the ones that come to mind now are the ones written by Steven Isel and Adam Thirer that show that what politicians, decision makers, and authorities of a country do, of course, but also say, and their attitudes in general, do a lot to shape the innovation culture of that country as a whole. So perhaps an improvement would really be an improvement, for the whole ecosystem and not only for that. And really, I'm not talking that there should be subsidies or anything like that, not at all, but perhaps a different approach. And what ex-smokers who switched to safer alternatives express, more than half, 52%, would like to see a switch, a change in the government's attitudes towards these products. And like I was saying, it's interesting that if we go back to the very beginning of the poll, these people changed because they wanted to find healthier alternatives, and they see this basically as taking, using tools to improve their well-being, and clearly they don't see that as coming, let's say, they don't see that reflected in the attitudes of the government. And that gap, perhaps, is if it is as the users are claiming, as the consumers are claiming, could be, let's say, an opportunity for Swedish government and politicians to try to express more openness. Now we'll follow for the discussion panel, but thank you very much for your attention.
So, welcome to our panel. Our MP, Jesper Skalberg Karlsson, who is from the Moderate Party and on the Committee of Health and Welfare, representing the government, I suppose, or at least the politicians. Dr. Anders Milton, who is a specialist physician, a PhD at University of Uppsala, former chairman of the World Medical Association, former Secretary General of the Swedish Medical Association, and past president of the Swedish Red Cross, among very many other things. We had to sort of sort it out a bit beforehand. And Patrik Strömer, snusgeneralen, Secretary General of the Swedish Snus Manufacturer Association. I think we'll just start by giving you some time to reflect in your own words. Dr. Milton, if you would like to begin.
Yes, thank you very much. I think it's important to see that we have in Sweden succeeded in lowering the rate of smoking. I mean, it's now 5.6% of the men that smoke. However, there are about almost 30% of the men that use nicotine daily, but they don't smoke, they use something else. In Sweden, mostly it's snus or vaping, and it doesn't cause cancer. We have the lowest incidence of cancer in the European Union. However, the same amount of Swedish men use nicotine as basically the average of the European Union. But we have a lower incidence of lung cancer. Why? Well, again, because people don't smoke. They use other things instead. And I think that the Swedish government, I'm talking about the politicians here, the Swedish government should be proud of that. I mean, we have something to teach the world. I mean, we have shown that you can lower the rate of smoking and still have happy consumers. We have tried from the Snus Commission, we have tried to present this to Brussels, to the European Union, and they don't want to see this. We have tried to say that if you want to beat cancer, you should at least start with smoking. I mean, it's obvious. No, they don't want to do that. Or rather, they avoid looking at the figures. We're trying to work with the World Health Organization. I was part of the Swedish delegation to the World Health Organization assembly each year for probably 15 years. You know, they talk about a number of things, but they don't talk about cancer when it comes to tobacco. And the point is that we do not, or the majority of activists, as it were, and public health agencies, they do not want to introduce something else. They don't want to accept harm reduction as such in the field of tobacco. We are trying to say that, tell people the true story. I mean, if you just tell them, they can choose themselves. If you smoke, half of the real smokers die from smoking. If you use snus or something like that, it's not a health product, but it won't kill you. You will snus until you die of old age, as it were. Why not tell people that? I think that our public health agencies are, with all respect, as much as they do not want to accept harm reduction. And we have accepted in other areas of life. When it comes to taxation of liquor, it's much more, the taxation in Sweden, according to Parliament, is much higher on hard liquor than it's on wine and beer per milliliter of alcohol. It's higher there, We accept it. We have accepted, I was one presented proposition to the government. I did some studies for different governments, and I said that let's exchange syringes and needles for intravenous drug abusers. I'm not a liberal when it comes to drugs at all. No, but of course I don't want them to die unnecessarily. That's why you should exchange needles and syringes. That's been it took 12 years for Parliament to decide that, but it now is accepted. So we do that. I mean, every community in Sweden have the obligation to see to it that needles and syringes are exchanged. I think we accept harm reduction, and we should do it also in the field of tobacco, because our figures are, fantastic, as it were. And I think we should be proud of that. I think I want to give this as a gift to the Swedish government. Be happy. Tell the world we have succeeded.
Patrik, why aren't people listening? Or don't they just care?
Ooh, that's a very tricky question. I agree with Dr. Milton almost every way. Snus is an innovation. It just happens to be 200 years old. And the first snus was used as a everyday enjoyment for the hard-working people in Sweden. So it was not invented as a harm reduction product. It was just you needed to have both your hands while doing your daily work. And the snus pouches in the 1970s, they came to market roughly at the same time when the first lung cancer reports started to penetrate the society. And that changed everything. And as a matter of fact, the EU snus ban created a Swedish national identity that we have snus in Sweden and we use it. So it's okay, it's socially accepted. So I think that's one of the reasons that Sweden not only has the lowest smoking prevalence, but also that we are the only country where women have smoked more than men. If it was information in schools, or smoking bans, or taxation, or anything like that, how do you answer that women smoked more than men? I don't know of any other health-related issue where men are more compliant to information. And then, of course, it was wrong in the presentation. It was 2015 the nicotine pouches were introduced in Sweden. And it's clear. Now the women are catching up with the men here in Sweden. So we now have 2 smoke-free generations, up to 29 and 30 to 44. Clear public data. We have the lowest smoking prevalence in Sweden. We have 100 million smokers in the European Union. We have more than 1 billion smokers in the world. And we have the solution here. Give people options. And I don't know why decision makers are not willing to listen to that. And the European Union has this beat cancer strategy. Why not take a look at the best country when it comes to lung cancer? See what they have done. When you benchmark against the best. Otherwise, you won't get any results. So I still don't have any answer to your question. I'm sorry.
Yes, but we usually can't wait to tell every other country what they're doing wrong in every other conceivable area. Why are we not yelling this from the rooftops?
Oh, that's a really baffling question because, you know, being pro snus, it's really an uphill battle, and I can't seem to figure out why more politicians are not. We have the public health data. We know that we are leading when it comes to being the first smoke-free country in the European Union, but politicians don't seem to mind. So what do politicians really care about? Well, polling numbers. And just looking at my own party, I know that two of the most successful campaigns in the last elections were made by myself, and my now colleague Oliver Rosengren, who are both very pro-snus. So the voters seem to like the message. When it comes to the public health data, it seems to be very very conclusive, and we are, you know, facing these other major problems when it comes to drugs bought online, and they are not always what they seem to be. I myself would be very proud if we were to switch the focus from banning snus and other nicotine products to actually focusing on what harms people, because a lot of people in the Swedish Parliament are, you know, saying, or at least confessing with their lips, that, well, we want evidence-based harm reduction, but then every year when there are proposals put forward to, for example, allow snus in the European Union, they are vetoed into oblivion. So it's a really baffling question, and I think we need to, you know, find more friends when it comes to these questions, these topics. And I think this report actually was very interesting because it focused a lot on the gender aspect. The whole Committee on Social and Welfare met with the Public Health Board, the Public Health Administration in Solna this fall, and they were showing us these great graphs, like, look, young girls aren't smoking anymore. And then you asked a follow-up question, so why don't they? And they were, you know, squirming a little bit, and then they said, well, it's the nicotine pouches. Well, that's great. But they saw this as a tremendous problem, even when we're facing problems with, you know, drugs bought on the internet that are not always what they seem, when it comes to childhood obesity and other questions where we could really do more, but we seem to be narrow-mindedly trying to ban the thing that's helping us live longer lives, live better lives, which is really troubling and really baffling, to say the least.
Yes.
No, I just want to say that I think it's very important what you say, and I think that unfortunately, the people that are against, you know, alternatives to cigarette smoking, they want to ban everything because they don't want people to be dependent upon, be it snus or be it vapes or be it something else. And of course you are dependent upon it. Again, it's not a health product. I mean, there are times in life when you shouldn't smoke. If you are a woman and you're pregnant, you shouldn't smoke. You shouldn't use snus either, most likely. But on the other hand, we know that you can live with snus. You don't die from it. And, you know, why is that not accepted? I mean, again, we're talking about science. We talk about the contrary is fake news. And this is fake news. You know, the fact that snus is as bad as cigarettes. It's not. Again, it's rather simple. Tell people as it is, and so that they have a choice. You know, simple as that.
We keep coming back to snus, obviously, seeing who's in the panel. But is it that simple? Is the Swedish success a story about snus?
Mainly, yes. Of course, I'm a snus lobbyist, so I'm a little bit biased here. But I think it's very important that you have different options and a variety of products available and affordable. Snus doesn't fit everybody, I understand that, especially not the original loose. It's a niche product very much. So a variety and options. And I think it's interesting in the presentation, there were 4 points at the end. And I think only number 3 is applicable when it comes to Sweden. The other is not. So this is a change in Swedish society away from smoking to other products, regardless of the public policy or taxation or the information provided by the authorities. So people who have quit smoking have decided for themselves without information from the authorities that this is a better product. Despite.
Yeah, but on the other hand, I mean, they perhaps listen to us, you know, the Snus Commission and others that are propagating change of nicotine intake. But you know, we did a study some years back, you know, where we asked 1,000 women and 1,000 men, and I think 38 or 40% of the women, they thought that snus was as bad as cigarettes when it comes to health. That's the information they get, you know, and a lot of the people that are actively working against snus or other forms of nicotine, they cannot accept the fact that the British Medical Association accepted that if somebody cannot stop smoking with the help of the healthcare system, with all the resources that the healthcare has, if they cannot stop smoking, tell them to use vapes in England, because that's what they have. I mean, that's what we would like to have our authorities, the health authorities, understand the difference between smoking cigarettes where you die and other ways of getting nicotine where you don't die.
And also, I think it's possible for you with the medical knowledge to also elaborate on the actual health effects, because looking at other addictions, for example, alcohol, if someone is having a troublesome, you know, use of alcohol and they stop, they quit cold turkey, they're going to have some serious physical withdrawal symptoms. Yeah. With nicotine, it's not the same.
No, I mean, you again, I mean, I don't use snus myself. No? I don't smoke basically either, but you don't get cold turkey from stopping nicotine. But it's much easier to stop smoking by using something else, by using snus in our case, than using something else. And so I think we should help people get away from smoking to something else, which is much less harmful.
And also looking to like the evidence-based health effects. Are there other health effects rather than just raising cortisol from nicotine? Because, you know, we could say that smoking is the worst, then we have the tobacco snus, then we have the nicotine pouches, then we have salad, but salad doesn't really produce much cortisol.
Well, I mean, you know, as Professor Doll, I think, you know, the British professor that followed 13,000 doctors that were smoking and 13,000 that were not smoking. And it surprised, you know, the smokers died, but the others didn't die. I mean, of old age, obviously. But he said that you smoke for the nicotine, but you die from the tar. Because with cigarettes, you inhale a lot of tar. You die from that. You don't die from the nicotine as such, but you die from the tar. And what we are trying to say to the Swedish health authorities and obviously the Swedish government is remove the tar, get people to use other products, and they will live happily and see the grandchildren grow.
I hardly feel like I'm needed here at all, which is lovely. You have to love a panel that sort of moderates themselves. Do you believe that, and this is a question to all of you basically, do you believe that our history of snus has affected policies in these areas concerning other smokeless tobacco products. Do you still have, are the Swedish government more open? Are they still as skeptical?
I think it might have helped a little bit. I mean, snus has been flavored, I don't know for how long, but the specific brand General has been flavored with bergamot. So it's basically the same taste as Earl Grey tea since middle of the 19th century. And the last bill from the government proposed that as there are flavors in snus, flavors should be allowed also in nicotine pouches. Whereas for vape, the government proposed a ban on flavors. So only tobacco flavor would be allowed. And I met with some people and I told them this is a bad legislation, basically, because when it comes to food legislation, there are some substances that are dangerous and they are banned, and there are others and you should have limits on them. But not this kind of taste law. I mean, how should you prove that this is a tobacco taste and that is not a tobacco taste? Should you have civil servants puffing vapes and trying to define, no, this is not tobacco? I mean, if I was a vaping manufacturer, I would have tried to produce tobacco number 8, which has a smell of strawberries and vanilla, and claim that it is tobacco in my mouth. And how should you go against that? We cannot have this kind of legislation. So thanks to the flavor in snus, there was no ban on flavor in nicotine pouches, and now we have a reasonable regulation on nicotine pouches in Sweden, and we also have flavors in vape, which is great because then smokers can turn to vape in Sweden. They don't want the tobacco taste. They presumably want other kind of taste, as the report showed.
So what can other countries learn? If we leave the question about what we actually tell them, what can they learn from the Swedish example? What are the key takeaways?
I think that it's important for the Swedish government to work on the European Union and to work on the World Health Organization, because they are, I mean, the World Health Organization is inciting countries to ban everything but cigarettes, and that's wrong. I mean, it will kill people unnecessarily. Give them alternatives, and let them decide for them. Give them the facts of the alternatives, and let them decide for themselves. I think that's what we should try to focus. And I think that we have by chance, I mean, we have come to that conclusion, in Sweden, politically speaking. We accept snus, and we accept the different levels of nicotine, and we accept the different tastes that they have. And we should allow other countries, other populations to do the same. Simple as that. And make it simple, Tell people and give them alternatives.
And how do we get Sweden's government and authorities to actually embrace this and start pushing for snus in Brussels and whatnot?
I'm going to keep doing just that. I have been for some time. I have not been very successful. I must say, I'm in a very, very small minority, but every legislation, every bill starts with just a few people, and then you have to make sure that the movement sort of grows. And I think the examples given here, also given by Patrik in the earlier years, are very they're overwhelmingly pointing us towards one direction. And I must say that the European Union should of course have a goal to be smoke free, and looking at what works best seems to be a good method in all of politics, and snus is of course a key component in that. But it is an uphill battle, I must say, not just in Parliament as a whole, but also making sure that the can I call them bureaucrats? I could. that people in the sort of mid-level authorities
In the family, you can say that.
yeah, are not allowed to do anything they like because, as we've mentioned earlier, snus and nicotine pouches are often sort of clumped together with cigarettes, which is very counterproductive and very, very sad actually, because we want people to live longer, we want people to have better lives, and I think it's better to have a stimuli of cortisol rather than having lung cancer at 45, which I can't believe I have to repeat so many times when talking about these questions. The new government, I believe, has taken small steps, not big ones, not giant leaps in any way, but small steps towards a more evidence-based policy. But of course, a lot more can be done and should be done in the oncoming years, as long as we can agree within the government and with our coalition partners.
To return to the issue of public health, smoking is suddenly a demographic issue in large parts of the world. Do we see any similar sort of situation for smokeless tobacco products? Patrik, you said that we're one of the few countries where we have more female smokers than male.
Yeah. I mean, snus has traditionally been a male habit in Sweden, and that has changed thanks to nicotine pouches and also thanks to vapes. So what's interesting is that this was something for the working people, working class, and you were not seeing these tobacco cans in boardrooms or academics. Today, snus is basically classless. You have no socio-economical factors derived from snus use, but smokers, who are the people who still smoke in Sweden? There are older women and male people born abroad. So basically, there are some differences, and when you complain about unequal health, well, go to the point. See what is the key factor here. Yeah, those people who have lower education, lower income, they also tend to smoke more. And why? Because the information they are provided from the authorities don't tell them the truth.
We saw in the presentation that cost of alternative tobacco products is a driving factor in turning to other products rather than traditional cigarettes. Is that something to work onwards with? Should we make them cheaper? I mean, they already are. Cigarettes are prohibitively expensive, but...
Yeah, I mean, the snus users, they subsidize the rest of the taxpayers in Sweden with some 3 billion crowns or something like that. But as a matter of fact, Sweden has the cheapest cigarettes among the Nordic countries today. So, I mean, Norway, of course, is more expensive because they have oil. But Finland and even Denmark, they have more expensive cigarettes today than Sweden. And Sweden has the lowest smoking prevalence. So how do you explain that? And of course, it's important not to tax these products out of the market. But I think there is a reasonable regulation on nicotine pouches, and the tax level on snus is too high because it became a fiscal product. And there's nothing so dependent as a special excise tax.
So is that the main issue?
Yeah.
We can't lower the tax on snus because it would mess up the fiscal planning.
It would not mess up, but it would be a different budget, yes.
But you could also imagine a world, or you could imagine a proposal to do it as a zero-sum game where you actually raise the tax on cigarettes and products that are burned with tobacco and lowered on nicotine pouches and snus. So it would be possible if you could find the support for it, definitely.
Again, I think it's important to see that we have the Swedish government and the Swedish Riksdag, the parliament, have accepted that fact when it comes to alcohol.
Yeah.
There we have higher taxes for strong alcohol, lower for wine, and lowest for beer.
Yeah, and I'm also a huge proponent of allowing Systembolaget to sell actually also cold alcohol in their shops, but you could, add a small percentage of alcohol tax to make sure that it isn't used for immediate consumption if you have a troublesome use, for example. So if you are creative with the taxation and want to steer towards the goal of harm reduction, it should be possible, definitely.
And what is the end goal? What laws and politics do we actually want to see from Brussels on this? What is the ideal stage?
And any country where cigarettes are allowed should also allow other products. Now the Netherlands are keeping the cigarettes, but are banning the nicotine pouches. It's a trade barrier. It has nothing to do with public health, of course. I don't know if there are fiscal reasons behind it as well, but a plain level field. That's all I'm asking for.
Yeah, again, I think tell people the truth, and then see to it that there are alternatives.
Yeah, and stop the looking back to the Netherlands and Amsterdam. I have a couple of friends who live there, and as many people are aware, a lot of drugs are not criminalized in Amsterdam. But every week there are news reports about the harmful and dangerous snus that is used to lure kids into violent gangs, which is just mind-boggling looking at other substances that are being sold on every street corner. So stop the fear-mongering and leveling the playing field would be ideal, evidence-based and towards the goal of harm reduction.
I am Bengt Wiberg, a snus pouch inventor and patent holder and tobacco harm reduction advocate. If we sort of go up in a helicopter and look at the helicopter view, isn't the problem that so many people still believe that it is the nicotine that causes death and cancer? I was watching a children's program with my grandchildren. It wasn't this weekend, but it was a weekend. And 10 o'clock in the morning, I see advertisement for nicotine gum and nicotine spray and nicotine plasters. So it's the same nicotine that we are using in Sweden in nicotine pouches. And I heard in the United States that there was a survey a couple of years ago saying that 80% of US doctors, all kinds of doctors, believe that nicotine is causing cancer. And this really surprised me because it should be said once and for all, and it would be great if the government also stated this. If I Google, does nicotine cause cancer? And FDA, the Food and Drug Administration of the biggest control organ in the world, you find the answer, no, it's not the nicotine that causes cancer. It's the gases from inhalation, from combustion that causes cancer. And we have the anti-smoking, anti-snooze, anti-nicotine movement all over the world, who are telling you how bad nicotine is and then still showing grandchildren on TV that it's okay to buy nicotine replacement products.
Well, I think what you're telling is obviously the way it is, and unfortunately. And I think that the authorities, they portray the myth that nicotine causes cancer or nicotine is dangerous as such. Nicotine is something which you are dependent upon. And it's very, some people get a kick out of nicotine. That's why you use it. But it doesn't cause cancer. And again, we want the authorities, the health authorities, and the governments to say it like it is. be open. Again, I mean, let people choose. Tell them the dangers of smoking, and tell them that if you don't smoke but use other products, snus for example, you know, your wife might not kiss you, but it doesn't cause you to die prematurely. And again, tell it like it is. I think that's very important.
How many members of parliaments in the Swedish parliament believe that nicotine causes cancer?
Oh, your guess is as good as mine, but I would say
Too many.
60%, somewhere around there. But I'm also aware that we banned smoking in the balconies a few years ago, and a lot of people turn to snus, which I think is great because it's gonna give them longer lives.
I have a question for each. Again, thank you very much for participating from this event, and I have a question for each of you. And let's say, because I would like also to finish and wrap up this with an optimistic message, because I think there is a lot to be extremely optimistic. And let's say we are in Sweden because of something that is amazing and it's happening right now in this country. So for Patrik, my question would be, you are a person, let's say, related to the industry, and I'm not thinking only about snus, but you know, of course, you can focus it on that if you want to. But let's say, what are the opportunities that you see coming? I don't know, maybe, you know, next generation products. Where would you, you know, where would you put, you know, your hopes, or where would you want us to keep an eye on? For Anders, I would like to ask you, I mean, Sweden is going to reach this year the status of a smoke-free country, 17 years before the European Union. I think that's a major achievement that really cannot be understated. On the other hand, we have the what's going on in the UK right now, that regardless what we can think of subsidies or not, it's a massive turn. I know we have, and the UK, let's say, has a rich history of promoting harm reduction. New Zealand is another country, and there are some good students, you know, in the world. You know, anything can happen at COP, but let's say there are also very positive stories that we can say. And let's say Sweden I think Sweden is a country that, you know, like everybody likes around the globe. So how can we leverage the Swedish story? And you particularly are a doctor, and you are doing a lot showing the results, the health results that what's going on in Sweden is happening. And Jesper, you mentioned something that I think it's also extremely positive, which is that, and there's a political consultant in the US that says that every political output is, you know, produced, comes from a political input. And you mentioned something that I would like you to go deeper, if you can, that there's clearly a constituency for snus and for other. It doesn't seem that in the civil society of Sweden there's a prohibitionist sentiment, or, you know, people who think that nicotine causes cancer or things like that. So what can you tell us about that? Thank you.
Okay. First, I think the new European regulation will be different from the last time. Then there were big tobacco, big pharma, and big public health. All were against snus. And now it's a battle on nicotine pouches. And now the tobacco industry has switched from combustible to non-combustible. They clearly see that the 20th century there were petrol cars and cigarettes. And now there's a different century. So the future lies in non-combustible products. And with 100 million smokers in the European Union and over 1 billion smokers worldwide, 8 million people dying prematurely each year from smoking, none from snus or nicotine pouches, I think I have a reason to be optimistic.
Yeah, I think that the Swedish government should use the platform that we have. I mean, within the European Union, within the World Health Organization, and within the world, as it were, to tell people, you know, to tell the other governments around the world that if you give people information, if you give them alternatives to smoking cigarettes, then we will save, you know, a billion smokers. Half of them will die from smoking, unless we do something. I mean, half of them, it's 500 million people. And we have looked at the statistics, within the European Union, for example, and there are about 250,000 fewer deaths per year if they would have smoked and used snus as we do in Sweden, within the European Union. I mean, there's a lot of lives lost unnecessarily. And I think as a doctor, I think we have, I don't say we have the solution, but we certainly have one solution, and we should use that.
Looking back at the election campaign and sort of the modus operandi that both me and I think my colleague Oliver is adhering to as well, is that you can mainly trust the authorities when it comes to providing accurate data, but you cannot trust authorities when it comes to producing opinions. And looking at snus and talking to voters, a lot of them seem to understand that smoking is bad. They've been part of the generation which was exposed to a non-smoking generation, and so on. All these organizations, but I think there's a really small group of people that are working against nicotine pouches and snus, and sometimes when it comes to many different political topics, politicians looking to learn more about a subject, they go on Google, they find someone who is the organization for or the organization against, and then they just listen to what the organization says because, well, they have an organization, they must be credible. But looking to Gotland, which is very stricken by, we have a lot of cancer, very expensive healthcare due to people smoking a lot and not using sunscreen. I had to look into, well, what could actually be countering this? How can we reduce the cost for the public and reduce the incidence of cancer? And snus is by far the best way. So I think having a dialogue with voters sometimes gives you a better look, feel, and a better feel, a better understanding of a problem, rather than listening to these organizations that are sometimes being a bit hijacked and kidnapped, I would say.
Thank you very much for joining us today on this very important subject. I have a feeling we'll have reason to return to it eventually. Thank you so much to our great panelists for shedding a light on this. Thank you to Federico for informing us about taking initiative for the poll, with very interesting data if you're interested in actual harm reduction rather than whatever it is the government usually does. Governments, not our particular governments, just pointing that out. And thank you so much to our audience for joining us. I think that's it for us. Thank you so much to those of you watching this afterwards at home. Please keep asking questions and pushing your own countries to take steps to actually preserve public health and save lives. And for those of you who's here, you're welcome to continue the discussion just in the room next to us over a glass of wine or beer.